see. Their shoes look fire, but they're getting cold feet. Man, I'm all in when it comes to those drinks. Cause I ain't worried about what somebody gon' think. And I ain't worried about what somebody gon' see. Nothing y'all can do, y'all cannot control me. Brainstorm, y'all minds got a slow leak. Brainwaves crash, this is getting so deep. Everybody, every time I go speak, don't believe the hype, then it's what you gon' see. I can't be controlled. I can't be controlled. I can't be controlled. There's no stopping us now. I can't be controlled. Cause we're not in the crowd. I can't be controlled. You can't stop us right now. I can't be controlled. No, I can't be controlled. If I don't wanna be there, then it's time for me to go. Money is the motor, so if y'all don't even know there's nothing you can do to buy me, y'all are finally exposed. Hold up, man, you know that I'm honestly the GOAT. And I'm all good like I'm trying to be the Pope. If you talking money, then it's gotta be a joke. But if the money talks, I estimate it's gotta be a quote. Oh my God, man, you can't lie to me, I'll know. So really, if you try it, then you gotta be exposed. Headstrong, even when my mind is getting old. But even so, you need to know that no, I can't be controlled.
Live tonight from the virtual Daytona International Speedway, we say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome back. For an 11th time, we say good evening and welcome to the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series. Ready to go racing in 2022 here on RaceSpotTV, and so happy that you're with us as always. Alongside myself, Evan Pasoko, going to be joined in the booth this year once more with Nolan Rempel, and our producer downstairs, as always, is Hugo Luis. And Nolan, at 11th season of Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series action officially kicks off here tonight on the high banks of the World Center of Racing with the Daytona 250. Now, kind of feels like we started a while ago, right? We had the Clash last week, we had the duels a couple of weeks ago. That was all just warm-up though. First points race starts here tonight with a full field.
First race starting tonight. The first time we're going to be seeing a field so many drivers strong getting set to duke it out for 100 laps and 250 miles at the World Center of Racing. And it is just round one of what is going to be an action-packed season running from now all the way over into, I believe it's going to be early November. It is going to be one heck of a season to remember. And with these next-gen cars, it could prove to be one of the most unpredictable seasons in RSR history as well.
There are lots of questions. The majority of the lineage of the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series has been made up in the Gen 6 era. A new era starts here this year with the next generation cars. As mentioned, duels done, Clash done. It all starts here at Daytona, our first of 30 points races this season. First of 2 trips here to Daytona Beach, Florida. We'll be back in August before the playoffs kick off in September and run through the opening week of November with that finale at the virtual Phoenix Raceway. And once again, this series is chock full of competitors. Obviously, all eyes on Andrew Freenosh Nolan, the 4-time consecutive defending series champion. But with a new car, new rivals, and new question, means that, as always, he's going to have to fight and he's going to have to earn it. And this series currently capped at 50 drivers eligible to compete. You're only going to see about 40 of them on track here tonight based on qualification from the duels a couple of weeks ago. But 50 drivers in the series. There's another 30 some odd on the wait list. So there is a lot of talent that we'll see competing here in 2022.
And that, of course, means that I would honestly anticipate that we're not going to be seeing any field that will be lower than about 30 cars. That is the absolute lowest I'm willing to predict that our fields are going to get, which means it is going to be non-stop action and always a packed grid at every single race this season. Exactly the type of thing you want to see for the full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series season, as this series gets set to kick off another decade now of RSR competition. And you can see a lot of the drivers just sitting on pit road, I imagine getting final preparations done before the 100-lap race here tonight. Maybe going to get that extra little drink of water. You are going to need it after tonight, because as anybody will tell you, Daytona looks easy to drive, but in reality, with how tight it can be, especially in a full field of cars, inches away, it can be one of the toughest tracks on the season.
And not only will we be talking about the Driver Championship as we have for the last 10 years of this series, but something new to the Cup Series this year that we saw over the course of the most recent Winter Series is the Team Championship as well, Nolan. Gone are the days of 8 and 9 car teams. All teams must be less than 5 maximum drivers, and there will be a Team Championship as well handed out at the end of the season. Now, that doesn't mean that there are not alliances, right? You certainly have, the larger contingencies that have divided their teams into two, basically. There's a Keep It Real Esports, there's a Keep It Real Esports 2. We have an XP Motorsports for Extreme Performance Motorsports. There's a Whiskey team and a Tango team. I mean, there are still those larger alliances, but there's going to be fighting amongst some of those larger teams for a championship this year, which I think is also going to be super interesting to follow.
And all of those little teams vying for those very crucial teams championship positions could mean that we'll be seeing drivers linking up together a lot more so than we would even see in the past. Obviously, tracks like Daytona, Talladega, very much tracks where teamwork is, of course, extremely crucial in how these races play out. But now that these teams actually have a championship on the line, not just the Drivers' Championship, you have to wonder, especially later on in the season when we swing back here to Daytona, that could mean we might be seeing those teams willing to work a little bit together and not necessarily breaking apart on those final laps as teams so often do.
And you see a lot of drivers sitting on pit road as the clock winds down. Again, no qualifying here tonight in the sim. The starting order based on the finishing positions from the duels 2 weeks ago here in Daytona Beach. With that, though, the clock strikes 0. Let's go trackside. And for the first time this season, take a look at your SK Sim Racing starting grid. And Agno Phillip will bring us to the green flag. That is courtesy of the fastest time in single car queue 2 weeks ago. He'll bring us to the green flag tonight alongside Connor Horn. Then your dual winners, Sam Nieto, William Schmidt. They'll double up at row number 2 with Rhett McBride and Brandon Bowie in your top 6.
And that will put on row number 4 the likes of Bunatsu Major and his Sprite 82 Chevrolet, with Michael Johnson started beside him in 8th place. Shane Parrish and Nick Silver will round out the first quarter of the field and the top 10. It's Tom Wetmore and Anthony DeBarro in 11th and 12th.
Dylan Parker will start tonight 13th to be alongside Ross Cato in 14th position, and then Jaron Winemaster and Brandon 6 will double up to make up row 8. Timothy Johnson's back starting 17th tonight, and Josh Ball in the Cup Series starting 18th.
And taking off the final half of this field is going to be Thomas George and David Washington, Daniel Eberhard and Brian Chambliss 21st and 22nd, with Shane Ewing and Kyle Kamer 23rd and 24th.
As the field rolls, Chris Edwards starts 25th tonight alongside Joseph Tyson 26, Braden Whitaker and David Cobb 27, 28, 29, Eric Stanford, 30th position to Kevin King.
I put 31st up to James Pascarella with Sean Kalis in 32nd. Michael Kuczynski is 33rd with Chris Rabel in 34th. Sean Castro is 35th with Tom Morano in 36th.
And to round out your field, Michael Araya and Andrew Freenosh, Cody Harris and Nick Cohan. And for 41st position, Olin, Bradley Burke was originally eliminated from his dual race, but one of the drivers who advanced from duel number 2 was unable to make the start here tonight. Burke was able to fill that hole, and that is a look at magic number 41 through the field here at Daytona. It's a racetrack that we don't need to remind you about, but this 2.5-mile racetrack will play host tonight to 100 laps of racing, 250 miles start to finish here in the Daytona 250. 31 degrees of banking, 18 degrees in the tri-oval. You take a look at the track conditions now. 80 degrees Fahrenheit here in Daytona Beach, Florida. 108 degrees trackside, but mostly cloudy. Should keep things a little bit cool as we race into the late afternoon. Well, the lights are out on top of the iRacing official pace car, which will be in this time. The field is in the hands of your fastest qualifier and your clash winner, Agno Phillip, as we say, let's go racing in Daytona. Lap led of the new season, it goes to Agno Phillips, started on pole, but quickly Nolan jumped up to the outside line. We saw this in the duels. The outside, the advantage by 5 cars off of turn 2.
That outside line just goes with these next-gen cars. I don't know what it is about it, but whenever you get linked up on the high side, there is nothing that can slow you down. And Agno Phillip evidently taking full advantage of that, looking to rip the high side. It's San Nieto looking to push Phillip. Horn, Schmidt, Bowie, Johnson, all in line. And from there, it's Rhett McBride and Nick Silver side by side further on back. Already, a division starting to form as well from about the likes of 26th place on back. They've already dropped back into their own second train, about 3/4 of a second off of the leading group.
They're hanging it back right now. They don't want to be up and into the action too close to the front of the field yet at this point. So as they run, everybody trying to find a spot in line. The outside's advantage grows to 7 cars. A bit of a wiggle right there, but that shot off of 2 was the very clear distinction you could see where that first pack of 24 is separated from Tom Morano P25 on the back, where there is a pretty bit of a healthy margin in between this first and secondary pack. Now 100 laps at a Daytona RSR race, Nolan, nothing new. These races have historically been 50% of those of our NASCAR Cup Series counterparts. A couple of years ago, they were a little bit shorter, but they did return to that 50% format 2 seasons ago. That will continue here in 2022, but when you look at the trends of shorter races on the service, especially in what we see this year with the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, their season opener at Daytona only being 80 laps. A lot of their intermediate racetrack races only going to be 100 and change. These are longer races than what is now the average here on the service.
That, of course, does mean that for some of the newcomers to the series, and no doubt some of the new names that might even make a couple of stars throughout the course of this season, could find themselves in a little bit of uncharted territory. Now, that being said, with the iRacing Daytona 500 taking place just last week or these last couple of days or so, I think it is worth noting that a good number of the drivers currently on this field will run not just 100, but how about 200 laps over around the Daytona International Speedway. So for a lot of the guys that are currently in this field, 100 laps should be a cakewalk. I'd say it's more the races later on into the season that require a little bit more effort when it comes to working the wheel. Particularly, I'm thinking the likes of Martinsville, of Richmond, some of the shorter tracks, the road courses, where people could find themselves maybe slipping up a little bit more often.
And we're going to get used to, of course, the new numbers, the new teams, the new colors. You can see Kevin King, though. He is not in either of the large lead packs. He opted to start this race from pit road. So this has him 39 seconds behind the leaders. You can see the leaders are already at the start-finish line. He's only just now getting off into turns 1 and 2. Kevin King is going to lose the lead lap here very shortly. The primary concern for him, Nolan, latching onto the back of this lead pack when they catch him. And the concern for your leaders is obviously the speed difference is going to force 3 wide unless Kevin King gets all the way off the racetrack, and it might make things a little bit dicey in this lead pack.
At least Kevin King, when he inevitably does go 1 lap down, he will be that lucky dog driver. That is not good news for the likes of Brian Chambliss, who is 3 laps down. Also started this race from pit road. And of course, we have 39 cars currently on, 40 cars on track for the 41 scheduled to start. Because Anthony DeBarro did not take to the starting grid at all for this race. DeBarro is still a no-show at the World Center of Racing. I want to point out that that second train behind this leading group has gotten itself single-filed out. And with that, they are gradually starting to close on up just a little bit more up to the leading group. That pack headed up by Tom Morani. You saw them just at the tail end of the shot. They're looking to see if they can regain lost time, potentially make up some points.
And we'll see what they want, right? Are they going to rush to catch back up to the race leaders? Even though they're well organized, they may be a little bit more efficient than the 2 wide in front of them. Do they even want to get up there, right? Or do you want to be a little bit of a healthy margin back? Up in the front, though, the outside stranglehold on things has slipped away in the last couple of laps. And the inside now fighting back. You're on board with Sam Nieto. He's riding second in line on the outside. That's Agnew Phillip in front of him. But Connor Horn has led the last 2 laps the inside. Now has an advantage by 4 or 5 car lengths, and look up the road, there is Kevin King. So that inside line gonna have to move up to the middle. It's gonna pinch the outside a little bit tighter here, assuming they could all coordinate this. And Dylan Parker just about got stuck behind King, but it looks like so far so good as they snake around him off and into 3.
A little bit of 3 wide action with that lap traffic for the most part still upping good. Agnew Phillip to the top shelf. Nazi Major gets shuffled out to the middle, and Phillip trying to go back to the race lead and abandons Corey Cook. Phillip's out in front, but now has no help to work with him. Going to go out to try to get a bit of the draft there from Connor Horn, and it looks like Horn will not be retaining the favor. He'll tuck it in line with the 94 car once again into the run to the outside line. But you talk about getting hairy when you're not even a tenth of the way through the race.
I mean, these drivers are going to have to pick and choose their battles, right? They're going to need to decide when is it worth it, and is it go time now? Nazi Major doesn't want to stick to the outside. He steps down. He'll get the 11 to David Cobb to follow with him, and now they're going to try to come up on the bottom, led by that Sprite Chevrolet leading the inside line. But just as quickly as Agnew Phillip lost the top spot, he's got it back. Listen, 2 very different kind of philosophies and thought process to what you're seeing. That pack that we talked about dropping back, you can see them a bit of 2 wide back there. They're not worried about track position right now, right? You need to get to the final 20 laps of this race if you want a chance at winning the Daytona 250. Everybody up here fighting. Now, it is worth noting, you do get a bonus point for every single time you lead a lap this season, so at one point, could be big when we get back here in August for the regular season finale. So I'm not saying it's not worth fighting for anything at all. Of course, another bonus point available to the driver who leads the most laps in a race is Connor Horn, goes top to bottom, and now he'll have the advantage off of turn 4.
The thing about these drivers jumping down to that inside lane, particularly the second one in line when you're trying to push the leaders, is the fact that it causes the entire outside lane to stall in a much more severe manner than it would if it's a guy from the inside jumping up to the top. Now, it doesn't often take too much time for the likes of Agnew Phillip to get back up to speed and retake that lead. But it is worth noting that it does take about 2 or 3 laps. I'm not saying that means anything right now, but it could be something to watch out for when you get around within 5 to go.
All things that these drivers are going to be keeping in mind as this race goes on. Again, a long way from home. We talked about the issue with Kevin King. Of course, he has been able to kind of blend himself into the lower lane of this lead pack, Nolan, so he is successfully in the lucky dog spot. He's not the only driver a lap down. Brian Chambliss is down 3. Chambliss is not in the lead pack, though, so Brian Chambliss in an unfortunate position who accidentally disconnected from the service with a connection issue when the race started. He was able to rejoin, but it was late. It cost him several laps. He now in the danger zone. Also worth noting that Anthony DeBarro was slated to take to the green flag from 12th position into this race. He has not taken to the green flag. So 40 cars on track at the moment, with Phillip leading the outside charge, and that secondary pack, Nolan, has caught up to the back of the race leader. So it is one large lead pack, positions 1 through 38.
And Horn and Phillip both jumping down to the inside line, looking to cover off Connor Horn. Sorry, Sandietto jumping down to the inside line with Agnell Phillip. That leaves the likes of Josh Ball along with Kyle Kamer, and then, of course, Thomas George working all by themselves up on the top shelf. And a 3-car, making a 4-car train now as Ross Cato gets with the outside line. While I don't think they're going to ground per se, if they can stay linked up, I don't think they're exactly going to be making a whole lot of ground up either. Yes, that outside lane is powerful, but you're not going to be faster than about 10 other cars on the bottom.
And things looking a lot more discombobulated now than they did off at the start. I mean, we've seen the outside to be the place to be. Right now, the inside's the place to be. The outside only has 3 cars, and you're on board with Josh Ball, who leads that outside pack, being pushed by the 8 machine of Kyle Kamer. They also have the 12 of Ross Cato, not that far behind. 3 cars is enough to hang there. I don't know if 3 cars is going to be enough to go over the race lead again. We saw some of these aspects come into play in the duels, Nolan. Those were only 22, 23 car races. Of course, we've seen plenty of racing here on the service. We saw the Daytona 500 late last week here on RaceSpotTV. Of course, the Coke Series race last weekend as well. So we've seen plenty of Daytona racing. We kind of know what to expect. The outside's going to need some more help, but it just comes down to how aggressive drivers are willing to be when they want to push it. And, if this race could stay green, we're looking at 2 green flag pit stops necessary to get us the distance. So you can't win the race until you got fuel to go to the end, and there's a long way still to go this time by to put lap number 14 behind us. That Agnell Phillip will lead his 11th lap of the afternoon.
And obviously, as super speedway races go, it is going to be a very common sight to be seeing drivers looking to come in blocks of about 10 to 20 cars apiece. That is typically how these plate races play on now. I mean, you look at the Daytona 500 of the NASCAR Cup Series just yesterday, and of course, you're seeing sometimes as many as 25 to 30 cars all coming down to the pit road at the exact same time, which made for some rather hair-raising moments in that race, and no doubt is bound to make some hair-raising moments in this one as well, as Josh Ball get a bit more help with the outside line. If you haven't, I guess you have noticed, you're Evan, but you got that outside train, which was originally 2 different trains on the outside line. There's one further back and one further to the front. There is still one further to the back. As green flag pit stops coming a bit earlier than I think I even expected. That's a group of at least 6 or 7 coming down for early stops here.
Well, there's no surprise that this is going to be a coordinated effort onto the pit lane. You got Michael Johnson in the number 39 machine on pit road. You got the 79 machine in. That's William Schmidt. This is all of the Keeping It Real esports cars. Remember, they are divided in terms of the team championship into two teams. Make no mistake, it is one large KIR alliance. And when you have that much strength in numbers, Nolan, this is the long play, right? You can do a maximum of about 42 laps on fuel. These drivers, you would typically maybe see them go to 42 then pit, 84 then pit, and go 16 laps to the end. KRR wants to do the exact opposite. They went for the short run first. They have now separated themselves from the rest of the lead pack, which are on board with now. Connor Horn assuming the 3rd spot. And because they have so many cars in that alliance, they may have a fighting chance to keep up to speed with this major pack. That strategy would never work in a group of 2 or 3. Will it work in a group of what I believe totaled out to be about 7 race cars? They're not that well coordinated off of pit road. That's concerning right now, but because they pitted from the lead pack, they're not at risk of losing their lead lap quite yet, but they're not drafted really well together. That's concerning. They executed well getting onto pit road, but they spread out, I think, more than they would have liked when they left it.
I was just about to go and mention about how the outside lane was starting to link up with each other with the 2 different trains that start to form up, but with all of the KIR crew coming on down into pit road, or just about all of the KIR crew coming into pit road that last time by, that has basically sent everybody that was once on the secondary line of the outside lane back down to the bottom, making it once again a 3-man crusade up on the top shelf with Cato, Kamer, and Ball all in one long line and they are still doing as much as they can from the top side. They're trying to pull themselves back up to the front. The slight checkups with the inside lane as you go into these corners does help somewhat, as well as on corner exit, but it is never enough for them to be able to make any kind of meaningful ground. So once again, they're not losing time, but they're finding it very, very difficult to gain ground as well. You can see the likes of Cody Harris a little bit deeper in the field, looking to try to see if maybe they can get up and pull up with them, but I don't think you're going to be able to do a whole lot when you're that far back.
And now this is the long game, right? I mean, KR definitely taking the gamble on wanting this race to go green. Not many Daytona 250s in the past have been able to go mistake-free, caution-free, but there's always a chance. Again, next-gen cars, this package seems to be awfully competitive. A lot of drivers have said that it's a lot more of a responsive package and a racy package than what we saw with what the Gen 6 cars delivered to us last year. But, you know, in 2021, the season opening Daytona race had 3 yellow flags. You look back to 2020, it had 5. It's been a while since it's gone yellow-free. We'll see if the gamble pays off for the KIR group of 7, because, I mean, the rest of your race leaders clearly, Nolan, not looking to respond and head down to the pit lane. They're only halfway through their first fuel run, and we won't expect them down to the pit lane until we get closer to lap number 40. Also, just wanted to mention, we've talked about the issues that Brian Chambliss has been having tonight. Remember, he dropped out of the session, reloaded in, was 3 laps down. He has once again lost connection to the server, so Brian Chambliss, 8 laps down. At this point, I don't know if he's even going to try to reconnect, and what a rotten way for Brian to start his 2022 Cup Series campaign.
Good news is there is still a long way to go. Remember, all the way up until November 7th is when the season ends. So there's a long distance to go, and here comes another group of cars going down into pit road, locked up from Cato, and they're 3 abreast into pit road with Kevin King, Shane Parrish, and Kyle Kamer all going 3 wide. That's about another group of 7 or so that came on down into pit road, leaving the rest of the field single file out on course. So far, it looks like everybody was safe and sound into their pit boxes, and I'm not seeing any issues for any of these guys out there yet. Looks like this could be a clean stop all the way around.
And kind of a mixed bag of the drivers onto the pit lane. David Washington's down there on the pit road. Kyle Kamer's going to be leaving pit lane in his number 8 machine. So definitely seeing the contingent of the SK Sim Racing drivers in that time. Stanford, Freenosh, Parrish, Eberhardt, Cato all in there. Kevin King representing the team. So it wasn't just an SK group, but there was definitely some more coordination there. And now we have had 2 different contingents of drivers break off of the lead pack and head down to the pit lane. And the question is, Nolan, where did those drivers blend out compared to the group who previously pitted? Well, Kevin King was the first car back out onto the racetrack of those who just pitted. He just got passed by all 7 of the Keep It Real Esports cars who had pitted, about 7 or so laps ago now. So keeping it real, of the drivers who have already pitted have executed better than that second group right there.
And overall, looking from about the main grouping of the cars that just come down to the pit and the Keeping It Real guys, there's about a 4-second difference, really showing just how good those Keeping It Real guys have gotten themselves sorted. It just took them a couple of laps to get themselves sorted on up, but so far they have been making some serious headways here, consistently logging in mid 47-second lap times. That is a big difference compared to the higher 47-second times that we're seeing elsewhere in this field, particularly in the main grouping, the lead group you're watching right now. At the moment, Keeping It Real is about 3 to 4 tenths a lap faster than every one of these other drivers here on course. That is going to be huge, because that is going to definitely ramp on up, and it is only going to keep stacking up more and more and more, especially as these laps start to log away. Looks like it could potentially be a Keeping It Real 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 by the time everything is nice and settled through and the first round of pit stops is in the books.
Yeah, that was the best case scenario for your race leaders, was that SK Sim Racing Plus group come down to the pit lane. You can see your race leaders are working around a lap to machine right now, so your lead pack is kind of swallowing up the 43 machine, Sean Kayla, so he'll fall down into a -1 lap position here as the leaders eat him up. But if that lead pack hadn't factioned off, right, if it was just the 7 KIR cars and everybody else stayed together, the advantage certainly would have been with the 20 cars in the lead lead pack. However, as they now work around the Ada Kamer, remember, you never saw this lead pack catch up to those KIR cars, right? I mentioned they didn't get off pit road that great, but they have since formed up. All these cars who they're passing one at a time show that they didn't pit well, and now you can see more race leaders in as Agnew Phillip comes in. So this lead pack falling apart is looking really good for the Keep It Real contingent who pitted first. A bit of a lockup there for Tom Morano. I think he'll be all right to get into the box. No speeding penalties, but just like that, Nolan, only 25 laps in, nobody going for a full fuel run on the opening stint of this race, and now everybody's been in for service. As we can see pit service right now, by the time they get full fuel, most drivers opting to get at least 2 tires right sides only. They're back off, and now we'll see the drag race. The net leader, in theory, would be William Schmidt, who's leading that KIR contingent, who is already out onto the racetrack. As we can see now, more drivers dropping down to the pit lane. This is basically all who was left. Connor Horn, Venanzi Major, Josh Ball, and Dylan Parker all down to the pit lane. But watch those slow cars blending back up off of the racetrack, led by Agnew Phillip, and then watch that fast pack coming behind him. It doesn't matter. The Keep It Real cars are already now passing him to the outside. Let's see where this happens with that speed difference off and into 3.
There is at the moment only about 2-3 cars left in that lead grouping up in the lead. You have to think they are going to be coming on down any second now to make these stops complete, as you watch two different trains being really passed up here. And this is the likes of the second group that come on down, headed up by Ross Cato and Daniel Eberhard, along with former race leader Agnew Phillip on the bottom. 2 different trains, 2 different speeds. Are going to try to go 3 wide, but Andrew Freenosh thinks better of it and sticks in behind Shane Parrish. So they're going to continue to duke it out amongst themselves, and it looks like those 2 trains are just going to blend in with each other, and all the while keeping it real. It's about half a straightaway up the road. These guys are nowhere near the draft. There's no way they're going to catch it to keep racing like this.
Yeah, that 3 or 4 tenths of a second added up over the course of 5-10 laps, and all of this is the battle for scraps. As this pack comes off at turn 4, Keeping It Real is already past the start-finish line. There they were, and going off and into turn number 1. So we are waiting on several drivers still to come to pit road. We're still waiting on Shane Ewing, Tim Johnston, Dylan Parker, David Cobb, Nick Cohan, Cody Harris, Chris Edwards, and Mike Kaczynski. So your top 8 drivers have yet to come down to the pit lane, and they are a totally separate pack to this, actually going in to turn number 1 right now. But these drivers have all pitted, and they find themselves about 6 seconds behind the Keeping It Real group, who will handily cycle through to the race lead once the lead pack that you see now top of your screen, led by race leader Shane Ewing, finally comes to pit road. Now, they don't need a pit if they don't want to for another 14 laps or so. There is no huge rush, but certainly Keep It Real Esports sneaky with that gamble and put themselves in control of this Daytona 250.
And there, I believe, is going to be the drivers up in the race lead. Shane Ewing heads up this train about 6 and 7. The point is, there are about 3 cars in here that are actually on the lead lap. Those are the likes of Dylan Parker, who is right at the back end of the field. You've also got Kolb, who is about the 5th car in line, and second place is the 4th car in line. Really going to show just how split apart the top 4 really are. And at the top of your screens, that is the pack that is still duking out amongst themselves. Nobody really knows where they want to be at the moment in that group in the second train over what will be the next race leaders, and it is just costing them more and more time. At the moment, there's about an 8-second difference between the second larger train, or what will be the net second largest train, as well as what will be the net leaders up in front, headed up at the moment by William Schmidt, who, if I'm not mistaken, William Schmidt is not a member of Keeping It Real. Am I correct in saying that?
So we talk about the alliances. William Schmidt is official now with Keep It Real Esports for 2022. He's going to be on the primary Keep It Real team You got Keep It Real Sports 2 that's got the likes of Casto and Six and Michael J. Johnson, but he will be competing on the primary Keep It Real Sports team. Again, at the end of the day, it's all the same thing, but in terms of the team championship, he's teammates with the likes of Brandon Bowie, other notable names, Nick Silver, and some of the other KIR core drivers. So he's very much locked in with that group this year, making things official, and it's only going to continue to trend their direction. I also mentioned, it's a bit of a gamble pitting early on your own, as you get a quick glimpse of the plane at the Daytona Beach International Airport off of turn number 2 there. The fact that this race is now kind of splintered off into several factions of race cars means less larger packs, and in theory helps the chances of this race getting green flag laps in.
Now, you say that, Evan, and you may very well have just jinxed us, because so far, all of the Daytona races that I've been seeing within the last 2-3 weeks or so, whenever things get settled out like this, you just start to think, you'll even hear some people say it, this is where things start to go green, we have these long runs. And then it will always come in the form of a wreck where it's going to completely throw that out the window. But it usually doesn't come for the big groups. It usually surprises comes for the groups of 3 or 4, and you have to wonder, how have you managed to do that?
Well, it certainly bugs the guys in the big lead pack, right? You're like, why are we wrecking for 20th? But I think it comes to desperation, right? I don't know how desperate you could be 32 laps in of 100, but there's certainly a lot of drivers who can tell this race is trending the wrong direction for them, right? Those are going to be the drivers who are going to be pushing a little bit more than maybe they should. I think that's where those mistakes come from, is it's just the pressure. Even though they're less removed from the battle for the race lead, they can feel the race slipping away from them, and that is why I think they get a little bit more nervous. And again, just to update you on intervals, bottom of your screen, Shane Ewing, he's currently a race leader. We talked about the group of leaders who have yet to come down to the pit lane, that is the top 8. Interestingly enough, only 4 of those drivers are actually in that front pack. Ewing, Johnson, Cobb, and Parker. Nick Cohen and Cody Harris, 5th and 6th, are 8 seconds behind the group that Shane Ewing's a part of. And then Chris Edwards and Mike Kaczynski are even further down the road. They are 12 seconds behind Ewing. So even that group of 8 who has yet to pit is divided amongst 3 different groups of race cars. But remember, Agnew Phillip is not going to be the driver who will cycle through to the race lead in this one. It will likely be William Schmidt in 9th. That KIR group is about 7 seconds ahead of Agnew, Phillip, and company. And again, that all just came down to the fact that they executed better on that earlier pit stop. And you can see on the SK Sim Racing leaderboard, left-hand side of your screen, the intervals, right? Your top 8, all within about 11 seconds or so. And then William Schmidt in 9th position, 26 seconds back. He will very clearly Nolan cycle through to the race lead, because the average time spent on pit road is about 26 seconds or so. So there is no chance these leaders get in and out ahead of that group. I think something else we haven't mentioned yet is tires and fuel, right? Everybody else outside of Keeping It Real spent 30 some odd seconds on pit road, right? Agnew Phillip spent 30.5, Sam Nieto spent 30.3. That was their total pit lane time, or about 12 seconds in the box. However, the Keeping It Real cars only spent 26 seconds on pit road and 8 seconds in the box. So not only did they gain time by executing, they saved 4 seconds on pit road too.
That's the thing about tires, right? Especially with these next-gen cars. At Daytona, tires don't matter all too much, at least on the first run. You can afford to double stint these tires, and it is often worth double stinting tires on the first run, because it gets you out in front, and on the off chance that the race goes green, you want to be as far out in front as possible to make sure that you're in about as small of a pack as possible out in front as well. So it's a very wise idea for the likes of some of these drivers to have made that decision to go for the shorter pit stops, and no doubt that is definitely going to be helping them out in the long run. I do have some developing news. We have gotten our 41st entry officially logging laps now. Anthony DeBarro just came out of pit road this lap by and has opted to join in. At the moment, though, being, almost 40 laps down, it's shall we say, it's looking a bit gloomy for where DeBarro's hopes might be for wanting to get a higher position.
Yeah, of course, his hope is that this race is a little bit more chaotic in the second half than it has been in the first half. There's accidents that take cars out of the race. He can gain positions, right? He will pass Brian Chambliss. He needs to complete, obviously, another 16 laps to get to the number that Chambliss logged, and then DeBarro would pass Chambliss, who's inactive, for 40th on the racetrack, brought Chambliss down to 41st, but that doesn't really matter, Nolan, because if you finish behind 36th position, you're only scoring one championship point anyway. So DeBarro hoping for to get that one spot, but then also for this race to be a little bit chaotic, and maybe he could get some positions back as this race goes on. Chambliss continuing to try to log laps, but is just continuing to struggle with those connection issues on his end. And again, I just don't think it's really going to come together. But I, to be honest, was not expecting this many different strategies, right? I thought it was going to be pretty clear cut. We're going to pit around 40. We're going to get a pit around 80. You're going to go, obviously, shorter on the end, no tires, and go for the final 20 laps. When keeping it real splintered off, I thought, okay, we got one detractor. But then when we got that second group off, I mean, I was very clearly, Nolan, not expecting three totally different strategies to play out. And again, you got some drivers who have been out there 22 laps since the last time they pitted, and you got your leaders, top of your screen, who haven't pitted at all yet, but they're 37 laps in the books this time by. They're starting to get close to the field window. They'll certainly be down within the next 5 laps.
And interestingly enough, you can see them starting to battle it out as well. Now, there's a good number of lap cars in this grouping as well, but 2 cars on the high side, that's 4th and 3rd place for the time being, and the car that Cobb is beside at the moment, up there in the lead, David Cobb, that is none other than Tim Johnston, current 2nd place runner. They're all trying to get themselves a run, and Sean Kalis wanted to go up and take advantage of the draft, but gets denied. Then tried to go back down, but Tim Johnston was in there, and that has just completely destroyed the entire run those top 2 cars had. Parks is going to have to tuck back in line. He's going to be forced to work with Sean Kalis. All of that means David Cobb was now reeled in a good chunk on Shane Ewan, the current on-track race leader.
And all that is Sean Kalis being a little bit indecisive. Wanted to go to the outside. The gap was there, but I think he realized, hey, this is a little bit close. I don't want to do it. Tried to abort, but then when he bit back down to the inside, that also would have been close. And he kind of just held his breath and held it in the middle. And fortunate that his SK Sim Racing Ford's all right. Now Dylan Parker tucked up against the back of the 43 machine of Sean Kalis. Remember, this group right here only has 4 race-leading lead lap cars. Cobb, Ewing, Parker, and Johnson. The rest are all lap cars or drivers at the very back of the lead lap just riding along. These drivers averaging about 48-second lap times, and that makes them the slowest group on the racetrack right now. So not only was it bad enough that they were going to get passed up eventually, remember last time we checked in, they were some 26 seconds ahead of William Schmidt in 9th. You look at the SK Sim Racing leaderboard on the left-hand side, it's only plus 21 now. I mean, they are losing consistently 4/10 a lap. They're going to be a mile behind by the time they pit, and I kind of wonder why they don't just do it now, seeing those times.
You wonder if maybe they don't even realize that the times are that severe. As you can see, Edwards and Kuczynski, 7th and 8th place, have come down to pit road. So we have hit the bubble. And I want to point out that at the 21.2 second gap or 21.6 second gap you got at the moment on that SK Sim Racing leaderboards, that was reeled in from almost 40 seconds about 25 laps ago, really showing the pace that those Keep It Real drivers have had out there. They have just been working together to pull themselves in. There was former 7th and 8th place in pit road, now dropped all the way into the bottom 10 and likely under threat of going a lap down.
Remember, we mentioned Kuczynski and company there with Chris Edwards were some 13 seconds off of the race leaders. They were 7th and 8th, so they pitted on their own. That leaves 6. 4 cars in the lead group that we just talked about, and then Nick Cohan and Cody Harris 5th and 6th, who are 10 seconds behind this lead pack to try to catch things up. Also, I think it's a little bit too early to hit the panic button if you're keeping it real, Nolan, but they are still in a minority in terms of car count. And while, yes, they will very clearly cycle through to the race lead, look at the SK Sim Racing leaderboard left-hand side. We'll hold that note for a moment because here come the 4. David Cobb, Shane Ewing, Dylan Parker, Tim Johnston all into pit road. They will now get their service. Do we see pit stops at Cohen and Harris? Yes, we do. DeBarro into behind. And those are the 6 drivers that were left. So this will make it really easy. As a mistake there, far side of pit road, Cohen overshot the box. That's going to cost the 21 machine some time. There goes William Schmidt to the top of the leaderboard. He is your new race leader. So you can see all the drivers with the yellow pit delta left-hand side. They all fell down the running order, and now our alliances are clearly defined. Your top 7 cars, the Keep It Real entries, 1st through 7th Nolan, Agnell Phillip is leading the second group of race cars. That second group, you can see them there, hunting them down. More cars, they're racing side by side. They were at one point almost 8 seconds behind the Keeping It Real group. You can see the interval right there alongside Agnell Phillip at 8th position, plus 6.0. It has sometimes been in favor of the lead group, sometimes been in favor of the second group, but over time has been dropping. Keeping It Real has a disadvantage because they have less cars. They do have the advantage, Nolan, of course, because they're all on the same team. So they are running single file. Nobody here is going to try to pass anybody. This is all a coordinated effort. For that second pack, sometimes they make up time. You'll see them right there come through too. They're going to make up time because they have more cars, right? More speed in the draft. The disadvantage for them is they are not coordinated. So you can actually see the last lap, the advantage now goes to 6.2 seconds in favor, now 6.3 of the lead pack. The outside has lost some time. So if that secondary group can get it together and work as a unit, they can catch these leaders. But the fact that they're racing side by side right now is not helping them at all.
And I think the big problem is they might be gaining in now, but they might not gain later, because you don't forget, those Keeping It Real guys, the likelihood that they are going to be coming in together again all at the same time on their second round of stops is almost a guarantee. But you got so many different teams in the second train here that it's honestly more likely they're just going to be split apart even more, and they're not going to be near as big of a fighting force. So if I'm these guys, I'm wanting to get myself as single filed out as fast as I possibly can, so that way we can actually go and potentially make up these spots. But they're only dragging themselves back. They have lost 1.2 seconds, about 1.5 now, in just one lap. All of that effort that they have gone into reeling in just those 1.5 seconds, which, keep in mind, that alone took about 5 to 10 laps or so, gone in about 30 seconds.
And it happened as soon as they started going too wide, right? You can see that secondary pack, bottom right corner of your screen. After the pit cycle, there were, what, 2 or 3 cars on the outside, right, when that interval was a 6.0? And now look how many cars are side by side, bottom right corner of your screen in the second pack. It's almost an equal number of cars of what's on the bottom. And it's starting to fall apart. That is where it has fallen apart for the second group, as they started racing against each other. Now your lead pack now dealing with some lap traffic. Mike Kaczynski, Chris Edwards, we talked about that duo who pitted. They are going to lose their lead lap status right here as the leaders look to the outside. This will slow down the Keep It Real group of 7 a little bit, because they're going to have to go to the outside. It's the longer way around the racetrack. It's going to stunt their momentum a little bit. But that secondary pack has to have learned, you go too wide like that, they lost more than a second in 5 laps. You cannot do that. Now, interestingly enough, you know, these drivers obviously aren't all on the same teams. They don't have the ability to talk with one another like the Keep It Real people do on a private channel. But the advantage of racing on the sim is there is open radio, Nolan, and I'm sure they're texting to each other, they're voice chatting to each other, trying to get everybody to get in line. And now that that second lane in the secondary pack has gone away, instantly, look at the gap now, back into the 6-second range. That is the key. You need to be single file in group number 2 if you want to catch these guys.
And just now they got themselves single filed out, but not before jumping that gap to about 7.5 seconds, and they're trying to reel that gap back in. Contact for the Keeping It Real guys! Just when we talked about how much they were getting themselves sorted, a big shove to the back of Brandon 6 completely scatters the Keeping It Real crew, and we almost had caution number 1. That was just as they were trying to still overtake lap traffic. I think the checkup started with Brandon Bowie, and then it was just a case if you can't push the pusher, and they were very, very lucky to escape that whole mess unscathed. But unfortunately, in all the carnage, they have lost one. Brian Chambliss, you can see him stuck on the outside line, and now no longer with his Keeping It Real teammates up the road. So that is not good Thing is, of course, Chambliss laps down. Now doesn't have too much to worry about. And now Phillip, now their group is starting to reel themselves back on in. This is the replay of what just happened. It's a big stack up, and right there, a Constantine effect, one into the back of the other, and good heads-up driving from all of them to make sure that that didn't end in complete disaster. But all of a sudden, look at that gap. 5.3 seconds, and that no doubt is going to be starting to close.
Yeah, that is huge. It cost them tons of time. Not only do they lose time on the SK Sim Racing leaderboard, now only 5.3 seconds ahead of Agnew, Phillip and company. Some of these race cars are damaged, Nolan. I don't know if any of them have enough damage where they would actually need to consider repairing it on pit road. But anytime you get a stack up like that, I'm always concerned about the front end damage, making that race car get a little bit hot. That might affect their ability to be as close to one another as they have been. They may need to space out a little bit in their line, and therefore slowing their overall pace down. Also, the damage on the back ends of those cars will make those cars a little bit more difficult to push. That was an unforced error, right? They did have to go to the outside to get around some lap traffic, but that was unforced. They were all single file. They checked up. They could not communicate that accordion quickly enough on their team radio channel, and that may have been the slip-up that everybody else in the field needed to compete with Keeping It Real Esports. Now, you're looking at this lead back. It looks like it's more than 7 cars. It is. That's because through all the chaos, some lapped cars have latched onto the back of this. It's a handful of drivers, 1 lap down. Kevin King's there, Chris Edwards is there, and Mike Kaczynski is there. The last 3 cars in this line are the first 3 drivers, 1 lap down. So there may be some internal battling going on in this pack for those drivers, because only one of those 3 would be the lucky dog if we were to see a yellow.
And now everything gets itself sorted into, I guess you could say, the natural order of things, and it seems like we've escaped we've escaped things for the time being, but obviously with every lap that passes by, it could potentially increase the odds as we pass that halfway point. 50 down, 50 to go, with the second train still starting to close, and that gap starting to shrink down to just 5.2 seconds. That is the lowest it has been so far ever since the first round of green flag pit stops.
And remember, Keeping It Real took less fuel than everybody else did, right? I mentioned 42 was about the number. Clearly, they feel like they could get a little bit more out of that because they pitted at 16. So they're going to need, obviously, they were able to take less fuel, Nolan, because they hadn't burned as much fuel, right? If you run 40 laps, you're going to need to spend much more time on pit road filling the car up than if you just did those 16, right? They are going to need to get to the end of the race, basically, 2 42-lap-long stints, which means, by the way, they're about 6 laps away from pitting. It's going to take them a lot longer, right, to fill up a tank that's basically empty over the course of their next 2 pit stops, when everybody else, who went a little bit longer first, is going to have to do less fuel on the next stop, I should say, too, than what you will see out of the rest of these cars. So it's very interesting. With 1 pit stop left, Keeping It Real is going to have to put a lot more fuel in the car, Nolan, next time they come down pit road. Agnew, Phillip, and the company won't need to put as much fuel. I'm not saying it's going to be 4 seconds of difference, but some of that time that KIR made up by taking less fuel the first time, they're going to lose on the backside. So that 5.2 seconds is a little bit deceptive because the pit stops for everybody in the secondary pack are going to be much faster when they eventually come in.
It's all of these various little factors that these drivers are going to have to be considering, and I imagine that these guys up in the Keeping It Real camp are going to be running those numbers in their heads, looking to think about how exactly they could get themselves all sorted. Now, if they want to take the 2-stop strategy right and make it so they can have 1 run that is very short on the fuel, I would see if I could stretch it until about lap 60 or so. We know that these drivers can make it 40 laps on fuel, and that was made evident when your race leaders went until about laps 40 to 41 before finally coming down to first round of pit stop. So if you can make it to 60, come on down to the pit road before your tank is empty. Continue to take that strategy of taking less fuel, top it all the way up to the top. You're good to go to the end of the race, and hope that there's no caution. Otherwise, that could really come back to bite you big time. But who knows what they're really thinking down there in the cars. And it really is a bit of a question mark as to whether they'll be able to even hang on to that gap, because you can see on the SK Sim Racing timing board, looking at Agnell Phillip, 8th car in line, just over 5 seconds, about to dip down to 4.9.
And because we are past halfway home, before we get to pit stops, let's take a look top to bottom at your SK Sim Racing midway race break. Again, keeping it real esports in the top 7 in the order of William Schmidt, Brandon DeBuey, Michael Johnson, Brandon Six, Sean Casto, Chris Rabel, Nick Silver. They all need to fit in the next 4 laps or so, and then they would be good, very closely, but a good on field at the end of this race. 8th position on the back then. Agnell Phillip at 8th spot. Behind him is Sam Nieto, and Ross Cato rounds out your top 10. They're now inside of 5 seconds.
Rhett McBride is the 4th car in line of the second train, along with Connor Horn right behind him. It's Josh Ball in 13th place. Thomas George is currently sitting 14th. Jerry Wymaster 15th in line as pit stops start to kick off. It's Minazzi Major, Tice, Wetmore, Eberhardt, and Freenosh to round on the top half of the field.
I find this a bit of an interesting call. And
Rabel
a huge
just wrecked the pit
incident.
road.
Chris Rabel's number 29 machine involved in an incident there. Did the 52 get damage as well? We saw that group dive to the pit lane. It was your race leading group. With 44 laps to go, Nolan, we were expecting them to come down pit road, but they were 3 wide on entry. Rabel turned across the nose of Kevin King to get to his stall, and Rabel crashes into the inside wall. He does straighten it out, but he is going to lose touch with all of his Keep It Real Esports teammates now, who are blending back out onto the racetrack, trying to somehow go 45 laps on the field to get to the end of this race. And with that Keeping It Real group having pitted, Agnell Phillip and company have cycled back through to the race lead.
Oh boy, so all of a sudden it all gets kicked off. This leading train down one more now. First they lost one of their, the likes of Brian Chambliss along with a couple of lapped cars. Now they lose one of the cars that they were racing with up in front, Chris Rabel. And all of a sudden, that has just turned everything up on its head. And I imagine that Rabel not only will not, yes, it is Chris Rabel. I don't think Rabel will not only be able to keep up with the leading pack, he might not be able to keep up with any pack. That was a pretty significant hit to the inside wall. And of course, that has given him aero damage. He has got to be hoping right now that he's not down on power. But I'm watching him at the moment. He's unable to realistically get any higher than 173.
That's tough, and listen, 173 is slower than what we'd expect in a single car run, so the main issue here for him was losing the time, right? It took him a lot of time to turn that car back around, to get straighted again, but the fact that he has lost a little bit of pace with the damage means that Chris Rabel is going to need a lot of help to get back into this race. Again, it was really nobody's fault. Rabel just came down to the pit lane with a little bit of speed. He was on the right-hand side of the pit lane, then cut across the nose to Kevin King there. You just have to realize, Nolan, a little bit of situational awareness. If you know you're in the first few pit boxes, slow it down, enter on the left-hand side. Do not let somebody get underneath you. Kevin King did nothing wrong there. He was just coming down to the pit lane. It's just an unfortunate timing, and that's also going to hurt that Keeping It Real group, right? We saw this pack here, your new race leaders, they were closing in on that Keeping It Real group of 7 because they had more cars. Now, Keeping It Real is down to 6. That's going to cost them. I don't know if it's going to be a half a mile an hour a lap, a mile an hour a lap, whatever the difference is. 6 cars, not as fast as 7. It will make it more difficult for them to hold off this lead pack. And again, this lead pack seemingly learned when they went side by side and they started losing time. They single filed out. We have not seen them race against each other yet. This group pitted 34 laps ago. Now, if Keeping It Real can go 44 to the end, Nolan, these guys, in theory, can pit at any point, and then they can make it to the end of the race. They'd probably be in if they want to split the difference in about 3 laps or so, but it'll be really tight on if they cycle through to the race lead or on if the Keeping It Real group will. Keeping It Real is 38 seconds behind your leaders.
The thing is, I'm not quite sure that they'll actually be able to have enough to make it over to the end of the race for the Keeping It Real crew, because I just checked the stint length. It was about 40 laps exactly. So unless they're able to save about 5 extra laps of fuel, which realistically at Daytona, you're not doing unless you're 20, 30 miles an hour off the pace, they can't make it to the end of this race. They're going to be about 3-4 laps short on fuel. I think they sorely misjudged when they come in on the first time when they pitted back on lap 16.
Yeah, 16, I said it right at that point, Nolan. The math would have to be 42 and 42. That's how you get those missing 84 laps. The fact that they only did 40 means that that last stint needs to be 44. That's an extra 10 miles on fuel that you would not have been able to do previously that you did this time. Now, I can only give them the benefit of the doubt and assume that they pitted when they did because they can go the 44. The only reason I say that is because if they're off by that many laps, it is a monumental miscount by that Keeping It Real group who 20 laps ago were very clearly in control of this race.
Pit stops are the game changers. This is typically true when it comes to intermediate courses, but it is no truer than at super speedways. Pit stops can make or break the race, and oftentimes when people say that statement, it is usually referencing pit entry, pit exit, the pit crews themselves. But it very easily can also mean, and this is a little bit less common, but it can also mean when you come down. And I think it was a bad call to come down on 16. They wait another 4 laps until lap 20, and that strategy is golden because at that point, from here, you have enough to make it to the end. And now that we are safe to go to the end, I've heard some people say they're pitting in. That includes Kamer, Kalist, Whitaker, Murano, all in pit road. And here come the leaders. Phillip bringing more down. They seem to have definitely realized what Keeping It Real has not. Tire smoke flies as 3 separate drivers lock it up on entry.
So right as I suspected, in 3 laps, and they did, because this splits the difference right down the middle. They pitted 37 laps ago. There are 37 laps to go in this Daytona 250, so they are all in. You talked about all that tire smoke. Some of them need to be concerned about speeding. I think they're all going to be okay. My main concern is they were not very tightly packed when they came onto the pit lane, right? That means that they're not all going to leave pit road that close together. It's not awful. They got a good group of 4 or 5 there led by Phillip, so it may work out in the end. But here is where it all comes to fruition. You have to look for the Keeping It Real group on the high banks of the virtual Daytona International Speedway. They will try to cycle through to win this race. You can see the fast pack right now is the 27 car led line. That will put the number 27 machine into company now around your race leaders. But more pit stops. Everybody else is now down pit road. Ewing, Parker, Johnston, Burke, they are all on pit road. And Agnew Phillip now going up to speed. Where does he end up in relation to William Schmidt is the question. Schmidt is the leader of that KIR group, and they are blended in with some of those lapped cars. So I believe this thing will cycle through, and the Keeping It Real cars are in the middle of this pack. There's Schmidt there. He's kind of hiding, 5th in line in this pack. Keeping It Real did get ahead of Agnew Phillip, but here comes Phillip now with the momentum. Phillip, there is the blue 94 to the outside. These cars now are fighting for the race win here at Daytona, and Phillip now trying to insert himself into the middle of the Keeping It Real contingent for A51 Pro. The battle is on.
Didn't quite work though. Sean Casto slammed the door shut before Phillip could properly get down. Good news for Phillip, he's got people to help him out. Look at the Red Bull Mustang of San Nieto looking to shove the A5194 around the high side. You right on board with Phillip, being shoved by Nieto's being pushed by Weinmeister McBride. Tagging along in behind on the top side, so is Tom Morano. Nick Cohen leads the way, and here comes Phillip looking to try to put that to an end, along with the likes of Nick Cohen, along with the likes of DeBarro, who currently leads the train altogether. And now, one by one, cars cycle through on the high side, and Phillip is back in the race lead.
Agnew Phillip and company were 5 seconds behind the Keeping It Real Esports group of 7 when they came down to the pit lane. They cycled out almost even with them and now have pulled ahead. What a recovery for the misfit group of everybody else who was falling some 7+ seconds behind. They single filed out. They kept their nose down. They executed clean on pit road. And to make matters worse, again, there's still a question. Can Keeping It Real go 44 laps on this stint to the end of the race, Nolan? There is no question that Agnew Phillip, Sam Nieto, Jaron Winemaster, Rhett McBride, and company can go to the end of the race because they pitted with only 37 laps left. So not only now has Keeping It Real lost the huge race lead that they once had, but they don't even know if they can go on fuel, and these other cars on the outside line can absolutely go the distance.
Well, it seems like Keeping It Real is wanting to make moves, though. You can see them going to the bottom side, and looks like the 52 is not quite sure where to go. Nastro's going to bail from the up to the top shelf. I wonder maybe some connection problems are causing Castro want to bail out from his own teammates, not wanting to put them at risk. You know, Michael Johnson, the mix, who's got left rear damage from the massive checkout that happened about 20-ish laps ago. Brandon Bowie will help Johnson on the inside line along with Nick Silver, but the Keeping It Real crew has just been decimated. They are no longer linked up together as they once were. And as you looked on board from Jaron Wymaster, third in line on the high side, currently running P3 as well on the racetrack, and it looks like this could be between Phillip and Nieto, a dual winner and, of course, the pole sitter for a potential race win. Now that we're in the second half of this race, though, we're getting close to the final quarter of this race in about 7 laps or so. You have to wonder how long these guys are going to play nice, still race single file, before they start to realize they're out of time and start to make moves.
And also, of course, with that question of Keeping It Real on fuel, I wonder if they take advantage of this larger pack that they're now in to save some fuel, right? I mean, if it's 4 laps, I don't think you can save that much. But if it's a little bit closer, right? Again, I said I have to assume they can do it because otherwise it would have been a huge miscalculation on fuel. So if it's even close, they could actually use this larger lead pack that they are now a part of to get themselves an opportunity to save a little bit of fuel. That is another big takeaway as well. It's also important to note that there are a lot more than just your race leaders in this lead pack. Kyle Kamer, Braden Whitaker, Sean Kalis, Tom Morano, Kevin King, and Chris Rabel are all 1 lap down right now and are in this lead pack. So that at least right there is a 6 or 7 car battle for the lucky dog spot happening while the battle for the race lead happens as well. So there's a lot going on with 31 laps to go this time by, but despite those 2 very different groups having emerged together, a majority of this pack has single filed out to the outside onto board with Ross Cato. Further back in the pack, certainly some side by side, but your lead dozen or so in a line up on the outside wall.
And those cars way in the back, that is Thomas George. People that are 12th on back to about 16th place that have also caught up to the leading train. So this big pack we had at the top of the race is really starting to form back up. At the moment, it's first on back to about 17th place, all in one long train. You circle through some lap traffic in the middle of this, like DeBarro and others, particularly Sean Kalis as well, who is, I believe, at the moment battling for a lucky dog spot with the likes of Kevin King, who's also in this top grouping as well. And you're going to see coming off of the corner here, they're still double file, even 3 wide, deeper in behind. I think these are the second grouping realizing they're not going to have much opportunities apart from this to make moves. They want to make those now before the opportunity closes.
If they want to make these moves now, get themselves in position to try to control this race. They have been in control for much of this race. I think being out of control is a little bit of uncharted territory for these drivers. And you can see now, I just mentioned they were all pretty much single file. Now Keeping It Real has grouped up on the bottom. They want to go 2 wide, some 3 wide in the middle as here comes Daniel Eberhardt on his own, trying to go through the center in the number 90 Ford with the Battle Beaver and SK Sim Racing on board. He had some speed, but everybody calls that middle the sucker hole. It's just not sustainable solo. What a move to find an opening on the outside, though, does Daniel Eberhardt.
I remember I saw a graphic once a long time ago about how there are 3 lines at Daytona Talladega. There's the inside, the outside, and there's the middle line, dubbed the line for the people who thought they had friends at a super speedway. And sounds like a couple of drivers are having some more luck in that sucker hole that others are. The car on the top side, that is Brian Chambliss, who just went yet another lap down. So Chambliss has rejoined the racing surface, but he is now a number of laps down and put in this double file 3 wide, which is not at all what any of these guys behind want to see. For guys like Agnell Phillip, it's just fine for them. That means it's a bit more likely that some of their main competitors for this race win will be taken out in the ensuing melee.
And there are some drivers within this lead pack who are part of neither group. Nick Cohen and Cody Harris have been pitted in 31 laps. There is no way that those two could go to the end of this race. They will need to pit for fuel. They are just trying to stay in this lead pack, and they're going to go about another 10 or so until they are absolutely 110% out of fuel, and that which I would expect them to come down to the pit lane. They are basically hoping for a caution flag to try to get them an opportunity to pit with everybody else, because there is no way that they get there with the way this race is playing out now. You just simply cannot go that far on fuel. Just watching now to see how aggressive these drivers get. It looked like that the Keep It Real group was going to charge to the front. Now Agnell Phillip and company work around lap traffic. They pass up Shane Parrish. Parrish now will fall a lap down. That leaves us with 30 cars on the lead lap. But the thing that gets me nervous about this pack, Nolan, is how uncoordinated it is, right? You certainly have your groups, but there's so many lap cars and other leaders not on the teams in the midst here that it's just making me nervous. It's going to be, I think, tough for us to get through these 26 laps to the end clean, especially with Daniel Eberhardt trying to do it solo. We saw him going through the middle. Now he's going to the inside, trying to crack the top 5 for the first time tonight after he started in 21st.
I'm listening to some of the driver radios, Evan, and I can tell you right now, you're not the only one that's feeling a little bit nervous up in this top grouping for the time being, because it doesn't matter if everybody in a 40-car field at one long train is all coordinated. It takes one person to put a stop to all of that. So it doesn't help when you take that one person, multiply by about 10 to 15, and that's what you're looking at the results of right here. You still have a top 4 breakaway up in front, but this pack of 2 different trains is continuing to close on in, and they are not allowing the top 4 to break away. They're about to go 3 wide with Brandon 6 on the inside, who was off pace, and I believe with a little bit of damage as well. So Brandon 6, having had better days, shall we say, on the racetrack, is looking to just maybe tag along on the back end of this train, hopefully vie for a lucky dog position in the event of what would be at this point a late race caution as we hit 25 laps to go. This time by Phillips giving a shove, and on the bottom side it is Michael Johnson to lead the charge, waving the flag for the inside line.
Still 25 laps to go here in the Daytona 250. There is 1/4 of the race left, but again, all of the cars competing up front are hoping that they are good to go on fuel to the end of the race. We haven't seen a lot of battling, right? We saw it early, but very quickly this became a race about being calm, getting single file, working together. I'm not sure how much time these drivers have had to see what kind of runs can I make out of my own. Daniel Eberhardt's probably the most well-versed in that, because he's driven himself up here with no help, basically on his own in that blue number 94 that leads the inside. Typically, there's more larger pack racing in the first half that gives drivers an opportunity to experiment, to see how these cars drive. Yes, it's been Daytona week on the service, Nolan. These drivers have had ample opportunity in the duels 2 weeks ago, in official racing, in the Daytona 500 special event here on the service, to practice in the draft. But we have heard all the drivers say these race cars can do a lot more than what the Gen 6 package last year did. It is up to them to make sure that they don't take that ability and abuse it, because you do need a little bit of self-control, because if you want, you could put it 2-3 wide every single lap. There's DeBarro and Cohen, who cannot go to the end, finally bowing out to come down pit road on fuel, and that leaves us with all the cars fighting for the race win.
And just trying to check in on exactly where Cohen was on his stint when he actually came down into pit road. And from the looks of things, Cohen had gone about 36, was going to be going on 36 laps on his stint. He was one of the first drivers that had taken a full 41 lap stint under the first caution flag. So far, the longest of the day, 43. That is still about 3 laps shy of the number of laps that the Keeping It Real crew would have had to make in order to make it to the end of this race. So we are still not sure if they'll have enough. I imagine they've had plenty of opportunities at this point to save in the middle of this larger train now that they're not the ones leading this race. It still, though, begs the question, can you really save enough? And I think this is one of those tracks where if this were a track that was like Auto Club or even like Las Vegas, yes, you might be able to. Daytona, though, so much more difficult to save 3 laps, because while you are still going to be about 3/4, half throttle for a good portion around the racetrack, that still burns a lot of fuel when you're ripping it at over 180 miles an hour.
You're on board with Tom Wetmore, the driver out of Fort Wayne, Indiana, for Roadhouse Motorsports on the inside line there, getting some advantage. But can he find a spot up in line, or is he going to be committed to the bottom of the racetrack right now? We'll see how he decides to race this one out. And he has help from the number 67 machine of Connor Horde behind him. But Wetmore's 51 car leading the bottom now, as all of those Keeping It Real entries have kind of now been divided amongst the top and the bottom lane of mid-pack. It is no longer all 7 of them in coordination. So now you have to wonder, do they try to get back together? I would assume yes, because with 7 cars or 6, depending on, what can you get out of Chris Rabel. Rabel has dropped out of this pack. We mentioned that he had the issue on pit road. He is no longer in this lead pack, so there's 6 of them left. 6 cars is a lot of power. I mean, that's enough to make a 3rd lane on the outside. That's enough to make a 3rd lane in the middle. It's not enough to sustain it, but certainly if you can get 6 cars to work together, it gives you a lot more power than trying to do something on your own 1 or 2. But we're seeing what we saw early in this race. The outside finding an advantage. Right now, it's by 5 car lengths with 20 laps to go.
Entering the final 5th of this race, and we're already starting to see things kicking on off. I remember when this race started, you had people trying to just get a single file out. Not the case anymore. Once again, Eberhardt looking to go on the one-man crusade, but it's just stuck in the middle line. Eberhardt's problem is while he is making these bold moves, and if you had people to work with him, he might be able to make something work. But the problem is he doesn't have anybody to work with him whenever he makes them, because everybody else is more content with what they're doing. I mean, look at that inside line, pulling alongside with Agnell Phillip, and for the first time, it looks like the inside will reign supreme. Connor Horn clears with the race lead and finally unseats the A51 Pro Chevrolet up on the top shelf, and now will the likes of Connor Horn jump up to the top end to help out Phillip, or will he stick on the bottom and stay true and loyal to Ross Cato?
And you can see Eberhardt thinking about that as well. Look to the outside, didn't hold. Now here comes Josh Ball in the 9 car. He'll leave the bottom, go to the outside. Can Connor Horn and Ross Cato survive as just a duo? We have seen tandem drafting here this week, or speed weeks on the iRacing service. Outside wasn't able to carry the speed through the bottom of the corner, though. They'll get the run now, but reinforcements have arrived on the scene on the bottom. Phillip pushing Ball. Cato pushing Horn side by side, battling for the race lead in Daytona. Phillip, though, wants to leave the 9 car. Ball gets left in the middle. Does anybody stick with the 9 car? He is dropping back now in the center.
And with just 18 laps to go, this could dash Josh Ball's hopes on trying to go for a race win. And Phillip gonna have to work with Daniel Eberhardt now. Connor Horn walks up to the top shelf of the turn 3, but it's not enough. And Horn has to quickly bail down low before he gets trapped in the sucker hole. Eberhardt all over the racetrack, left, right, and center. Up to the top end, though, being shoved by Agnell Phillip. Will push Daniel Eberhardt into the race lead for one of the first times all race long, but not for long as Phillip now jumps down low.
It's a lap led for Daniel Eberhardt, so he does get one in the back pocket. He becomes the 9th different driver to lead a lap tonight. It's also worth noting Agnew Phillip has led 43. He's locked up another bonus point. Here comes Nieto now. He'll go to the middle. Oh! They try to leave Eberhardt. Phillip comes up to block now. The 90 hangs tight, and Agnew Phillip getting dicey. Blocks low. Horn looks high. Horn back to the inside. What a move as the 67 now goes back to the race lead.
Oh, they can't keep doing this. They're going to be wrecking any second now. They keep this type of act up, and all of this allowing the top 3 breakaway. 3 wide, 2 rows deep. Phillip stuck in the middle. Eberhardt up on top, and he'll pull clear with Kevin K. McBride. Scrapes the outside wall through the tri-oval, manages to hold firm, and I think we might have just managed to survive one of the most hair-raising moments we have had all race yet. But with still 16 laps to go, going to be 15 this time by, you know that they are far from finished as Cato looks to the top side to put Connor Horn out of the right lead. And there goes Eberhardt down below the line, gets past Connor Horn, and Ross Cato holds on to the lead for now.
This race is getting out of control, racing like it's the white flag lap, but there are still 16 laps to go in this race. Can they possibly keep this up? Back to 2 wide racing. The 12 of Cato leads. Eberhardt looks to the outside. The 2 crosses over. Look out. Way too much. Slicing and dicing. And another major bullet dodge there. And now Sam Nieto falls down the middle.
Oh boy, Nieto gonna fall down the middle, but I'm pretty sure Nieto will take that considering what could have been. What a wreck avoidance there for Sam Nieto, and good heads-up driving from Connor Horn in order to scramble and get around that. This is getting out of control. It is only gonna be a matter of time before all of this comes crashing down on everybody's heads.
This is all it comes down to, is how long can this keep going? 14 laps to go now from the virtual Daytona International Speedway. This is the season opener of the 2022 Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series on RaceSpotTV. Ross Cato goes back to the top of the SK Sim Racing leaderboard on the left-hand side of your screen. Eberhardt wants to fight him back. The 2 wide isn't the issue. The runs aren't the issue, Nolan. It's the distrust that is the issue. And look out, lapped car low. Everybody's got a snake high. It'll force us 3 wide through the corner. So far, so good. But it's the blocks and the crossovers that have been the pain points so far.
And from the looks of things, once again, lap traffic going to be doing a phenomenal job on just holding it steady on the inside line, letting the lead lap cars through. 13 laps to go from Daytona. Ross Cato up on the top shelf, and you still have got first on back all the way to the likes of 18th, 19th place that are all still within a shout on trying to go for a race win from Daytona. It is not over yet. Anything can happen up in these top groupings. These 10 laps are coming up fast, the final 10, and that is where it is all going to come, and that's where gloves are going to come flying off, and so might bumpers, as people are going to be looking to shove their way through to the front of this race. And I have a feeling a lot of the alliances we can see building up all race long are about to be torn apart.
And remember, there is some question on what can the Keep It Real cars do on fuel. They all pitted 33 laps ago. There are still 12 to go, Nolan. That comes out to an incredible 45 laps to be able to get to the end of this race. Nobody has gone that far today. Agnew Phillip and company pitted sometimes 25, others 26 laps ago. They will all be able to get to the end of the race with the fuel that they have on board. The inside line has the advantage. 4 car lengths strong. Kevin King slotted back on that third line. Remember, he's a lapped car after missing the green flag of the race on starting from pit road, but he was in the lucky dog spot. This is going to take him out of that position, which could prove to be critical if a yellow flag lies in the cards. 11 laps to go. This is the view off of the back of the 12 of Ross Cato. The Fast Forward Esports Ford, still your race leader.
but for how long? He's got drivers working with him, Jaron Weinmeister and Connor Horn, but we both know that is not going to last forever, and it is right in behind where everybody is still trying to dice it out, trying to put themselves into the best possible scenario for when that white flag falls. The one place you realistically don't want to be if you don't want to be under fire for the race lead, he's in the lead, especially at a track like Daytona, especially looking at how everybody's been racing around you as 3 wide in behind. Agno Phillip up on the top shelf. You got Eberhardt in the middle. Cody Harris, a lap car, down on the low side. He's also got Eric Stanford, who currently was running 6th place when they hit start finish, and already starting to see some lap cars bailing out. And looking at Tom Morano, who just bailed out from this leading group. He wants no part in how this battle for the lead could play out.
It's been tight enough when you're 2 wide, but 3 wide leaves absolutely no room for error. And it's the 8 car dropping it back. It's the sucker hole for Kyle Kamer. Another lapped car going the wrong direction. Look at Agno Phillip, even though he's on the bottom, pinching the cars up top. Agno Phillip has had such a good start, Nolan, to 2022. Secured pole for this race in that single car qualifying 2 weeks ago. He won the Clash last week. He was fastest in practice earlier this afternoon. He wants to cap off a storybook Speed Weeks, but he's got work to do.
And up to the top side is going to be the likes of Daniel Eberhardt. He's got Andrew Freenock tucked in line. There goes Connor Horn. Sure enough, the Alliance of the top 3 does it last. Kato tries to block, but can't block 2 lanes at once. He has to jump back down low, and Connor Horn gonna cycle through to the race lead with 9, coming to 8 laps to go. But Eberhardt, an ever-aggressive Daniel Eberhardt, is second on the outside line. We both know that only means one thing, and it is that Eberhardt is about to pull something that will either work out for him or mean disaster for everyone around him.
8 laps to go from Daytona. Could Connor Horn do it in his return to the Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series? Also, how much would this mean to the driver on the inside line of Ross Cato, Nolan? Tonight making career start number 124. 3 wide though. Here comes Eberhardt through the middle, and he's got help. Here comes Freenosh. Phillip 3 wide. Do they go 4 wide? Into turn number 3, somehow still hanging on, and championship rivals from last season, drafting partners in 4 as Freenosh pushes Eberhardt. 7 laps to go this time.
Am I watching a Coca-Cola eNASCAR race, or am I watching real sim racing? Because this is reminding me a whole lot of what we saw in eNASCAR whenever they come to Daytona. Realizing, oh, trouble high, 1 car gets sent down low, way into the infield concrete field.
He saved it.
It was Johnston, I think.
He saved that car. It was Tim Johnston. Saves it, keeps it out of the fence. No yellow. We go on. Here comes now Major to the inside. Eberhardt blocks the middle. The 52 car of Casto now will draft with the 82 machine. And not see Major. No, there it goes. Pasquarelli gets turned. And at lap number 94, it only could go on for so long. We have finally our first caution flag of the evening after an absolutely insane 20-lap period where it was no holds bar, Nolan. They could only avoid it for so long, and it finally happened. Yellow flag number 1.
And a lot of the major players from Keeping It Real were in that wreck. Brandon Six was there. Silver was collected. I believe I saw the likes of Bradley Burke getting involved in that mess. You had Parker involved. Lariah, I think, just barely managed to squeak through, but I don't think might have collected something at the last second. But some big players. And right there, Parker in the 77 car getting together. That was James Pasquarelli, as you mentioned, that got into it, and they just got tangled together, couldn't get off of each other.
Yeah, just a touch, and I thought the 77 was gone. He saved it. It ends up being Parker, as you saw, who went around. 6 was involved. The 11 machine got some damage as well of David Cobb. The 95 machine of Bradley Burke piled into it. There were a lot of drivers, William Schmidt also included, who would pile into that one from deeper in that lead pack. And after all that, a yellow will set us up for a late race restart. Now, we've talked a lot about the question on fuel for those keeping it real cars. I was about to say, this yellow could certainly help them, Nolan, save a little bit, but they're almost all gone from contention. I mean, you've got Sean Casto's 52 machine for Keep It Real Esports 2 sitting in 5th, but then you got to go all the way down to 16th to find the 34 machine of Brandon Bowie. You got Michael Johnson in 17th, but for the way this race looked at the halfway point, to only have one Keeping It Real car in the top 15 is pretty crazy.
And on board with Michael O'Ryan now, we'll take another look with the Flat Out Motorsports driver who got a face full of all of this. You're going to see the smoke start to fly up in front. You can't even really see who started it. Oh, just lost it on the brakes. Probably would have been able to get around it, but just lost it as soon as he jumped on the binders and then overcorrected into the outside wall. That is where the damage on the right front from the Raya came from. I was wondering how he got that damage because I didn't see him actually hit anybody in that wreck. Well, now we know, unfortunately, an error of his own doing there when he jumped on the brakes a bit too aggressively, and I think maybe tried to turn down to avoid that all at the same time. What do you think?
Yeah, we have seen these cars do not respond well to sudden wheel inputs in the corners, right? We've seen, not tonight, but over the course of speed weeks here on the service, several drivers try to make a quick lane change, high to low, and the car spin out. I think it was a combination of him jumping on the brakes, plus probably trying to turn low to avoid the car that was spinning in front of him that just upset that. From the onboard, if you had told me he got hit from behind, would have believed you. But you're right, it was all on his own into the outside wall. And, well, they said the composite bodies of these next-gen Cup Series cars would help them, not get as torn up. Hopefully the drivers involved in that accident would love for that to be true because they're going to try to stay competitive in this race even with the damage. 1 lap to go until a restart, so we will have a 3-lap shootout within regulation to try to finish this Daytona 250. If not, 3 attempts at a green-white checker overtime restart if it is necessary. And for all of the storylines, for all of the team action we've talked about, Nolan, it is an Andrew Friedosh and Daniel Eberhardt front row.
Now, what I love about this 3-lap dash as opposed to a 2-lap dash is this. On a 2-lap dash, you have to just take that first lap to get up to speed, right? Because that's how long it's going to take before you can realistically make any moves. But they only have 1 lap to make these moves. This way, you got 2 laps, which means 2 chances, and you know that means we're going to be having a whole lot of other drivers that are going to be having a very solid run of things going forward into this. So, 2 laps to make these moves. Eberhardt is your leader, and Friedosh, defending champion on the outside. Ooh, boy, you know it's about to get spicy out there at Daytona.
And we've seen what these cars did that last run. It's not going to take them a lot of time to get up to full speed, and I would be very surprised if they can keep it at just 2 wide. It is going to be a bonkers finish here in the Daytona 250. Lights out on top of the pace car. To the safety of pit road this time, the field is in the hands of the number 90 Ford Mustang of Daniel Eberhardt on the bottom alongside Andrew Friedosh. Green flag back in the air. 3 laps to go.
3 laps to go. Friedosh up to the top shelf and Eberhardt on the bottom side. Already Philip with Nieto. Oh, they're wrecking into turn number 1. Major turn to the outside wall. Up and over into the catch fencing as well. And that will mean green-white checker number 1. Well, I tell you what, that 3-lap dash did not last at all. And still flipping is the 82. It looks like he'll be trapped on his side, potentially on his roof in turns 1 and 2. That is how you end a lot of people's hopes for a race win early.
It is the huge one at Daytona International Speedway. We went the first 90 some odd without a single one, and now 2 yellows back-to-back will push things to overtime, and it all developed very quickly off of the restart. I did say I would be very surprised if this race stayed side by side. We know that Agnew Phillip has been working well all night with the 2 machine of Sam Nieto. and they very quickly tried to get a third lane going, and there was, I believe, a touch. I don't know if Connor Horn blocked. We'll have to take a look at the replay to see. Let's watch it from high above. Horn is pushing Freenash. Here comes Phillip to the outside, pushed by Nieto. I mean, he went up a little bit, Nolan, but that's just guys running out of room, I think, going into the corner there. And when he got into Agnew Phillip, it came down, and yeah, Manazzi Majors 82 car into the outside wall, off the 2-car Nieto, into the catch fencing. At least about, I count 16 cars involved in this one, and Manazzi Majors, great afternoon, ends on his lid, 2 laps shy, and we will go to overtime.
It just doesn't stop. I mean, that's a wreck that just keeps going on and on and on. And what is it about that? I mean, a lot of the times when you're at these high-speed wrecks, even if it's a huge one, right, it is over relatively quickly. It's over and done with about 5 seconds, and you move along. But it's these slower speed wrecks, you're just getting up to speed where it just keeps going on and on and on. And it seems to drag on about as long as possible. That's true both in real life and in the sim as well. I don't understand the mathematics or the physics about how that works.
They just tend to be bigger when the moments are that much more important, right? You don't really get a huge wreck like that on lap 3. It always is at 3 to go for whatever reason, and that one just kept going and kept going and kept going. And you know, there's your look. The 82 car, Manazzi Major, upside down. I mean, you can see Windmaster getting turned in front of the field, McBride and Nieto into the outside wall, but that's the shot. Manazzi Major upside down on his lid. Look at the hit by Cato. I was just talking earlier, in his 120-something career start, could he get a first career win? He is collected in this incident as well. And again, the huge one strikes at lap number 98.
Talk about a big wreck, and I'm pretty sure Major just had no idea where he even was half the time throughout all of that mess. I find it interesting that it's so easy now for these next-gen cars to be picked up and over, and I've seen that so many times over the last couple of weeks or so throughout iRacing Speed Weeks about how many of these cars have just been in these bigger wrecks, and you'll have maybe 1, 2, 3 that will go flying into the air. And well, as Harrison Burton proved, it's just as easy to tip them over in the real world in yesterday's Daytona 500. But I mean, you have these little moments, and just one little hit, you hit the wall the wrong way, it just picks the front end up and over you go. And that was a perfect example of that right there. I don't doubt that Major probably would have been able to drive that car away had he not been flipped over like that.
It is unfortunate for him, and listen, he is not the only one with damage, right? You can see your current race leader, still Daniel Eberhardt, clean, Freenash clean, but look behind him. Connor Horn's got front-end damage. Sean Casto has front-end damage. Agnew Phillip doesn't have a hood. How competitive will all of these damaged race cars be whenever this thing restarts? Here's a look off of the back of your race leader. You can see those top 2 clear. Almost everybody else gets some piece of that damage.
Tell you what, Eberhardt is a very lucky man to have not, or Freenash, excuse me, was a very lucky man to not have been collected in that. That could easily have wiped out your top 2 as well. And as you saw from the onboard shot, just missing the back bumper of Freenash. And if it took out Freenash, it easily could have taken out Eberhardt as well, with cars sliding all over the place, and while they were still so close with these guys getting up to speed. So it's overtime attempt number 1 of 3. They just need to make it to that white flag, and then it's all bets are off. Doesn't matter how many cars roll over on that final lap. We're going to be green till the end.
I mean, I just looking through the field, the damage is worse than I thought. Wetmore's damaged, Bowie's damaged, Cato's damaged, McBride's damaged, everybody's damaged. You know, are we going to get a junk to race car that wins this race, or could possibly Eberhardt and Freenash being basically the only undamaged cars left? Could they push with each other, tandem up to get ahead of the rest of the field, and then fight it out amongst themselves?
Cody Harris is the only car on the lead lap, apart from the top 2 at the moment, by the way, that has no damage on his car. Going to really...
And he's on row 8.
Exactly. Going to show the extent about how much this really destroyed the field. This is a 2-horse race for the win now.
Two horses, can they fight it amongst themselves, or can somebody else play spoiler? Pace car in this time. 2 laps to go in an overtime shootout for the Full Throttle Cup Series opener at Daytona. Eberhard chooses the outside. Green flag back in the air, and it's a good jump for the Donnie car. He'll go low quick, get in front of Andrew Freenosh, who looks high, but the Donnie car mirror drives to turn 1.
And already you can see how many of these drivers have had just a terrible start because of all the damage that they have. They're still trying to wreck with each other in the background, though, as the guys with damage try to sort themselves out and maybe contend for a race win yet. But it's a top 2 breakaway, but they're not alone. Sean Castle's got help, and they're closing in about 4 or 5 miles an hour faster than these guys in front. Freenosh and Eberhard not safe. Here comes Keeping It Real. Get a torn race car win the Daytona 250.
Eberhard goes high to block. Freenosh wants to go low. Casto pulls in line. Caution, though. They did not make the white flag. They were feet away from taking the checkered, but the yellow lights illuminated before they took the white flag. And I'll tell you what, that'll be a nice slow-mo shot to look back on. But Daniel Eberhard was no more than 6 feet from the white flag. A wreck behind means that we will try it again and go to overtime attempt number 2.
I am almost certain that that all took place with Kevin King, because he was the one saying on the radio that he thinks that might have been his bad, and it was a big wreck in a parking lot out of turn number 4 as well. We'll take a look at this here. He just runs through Cato, through Cato and the 9, and that's a huge hit to the outside wall, and that collects an easy 4 to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 more drivers involved, because they just kept wrecking even well after the fact. You even had guys like Thomas George that had completely missed and were just clipped by the last possible car in the wreck.
And we talked about this earlier, right, Nolan? Seemingly how it's always the drivers way behind the race lead, right, that caused the incident. What happened there was basically there were so many damaged cars off speed that he caught them way faster than anybody else was going, and he tried to shoot the gap. Wasn't able to successfully do so, and all that did for him was basically he just drove directly in to the cars that were there with him, and unfortunately for him, that means that he does likely cause that incident there. And unfortunately for the race leaders, what that means is we're going to another attempt at the finish, because this thing is not done. That's the biggest takeaway. I'm sure your leaders were almost certain that they were going to take the white flag and erase that one out. We saw the run out of Casto. To be honest, if they didn't tuck in line, if they went around Freenosh and Eberhard and didn't hesitate, we may have gotten to the white flag in time. But your leaders checked up a little bit. Here's what happens behind the contact in front off of turn 4. And that's a lot of hard hits. Kalis parts the seas. More cars wrecking. There was about at least a half a dozen involved in that one that, again, came just before the white flag.
I think that's about as parting the seas as you can possibly get for a wreck at Daytona. I mean, that gap opened up just enough for him to get through and not the guy behind him to get through. That was some nice, I guess, shall we say, future mind reading to be able to predict where that gap was going to be and put his car in the right place. I mean, that's one of those things, you don't aim for that type of a hole. It just opens in front of you and you take it. Otherwise, he absolutely was going too fast to be able to slow down in time for that incident. And there you see Sean Kalis, and I think DeBarro scrapes the right behind him, but there you see Stanford drifting up and across, and he slammed, and I believe that was the 42. Goodness gracious. And Sean Kalis, a lucky driver to get out of that one unscathed.
It is a tricky one there, and listen, that's what you call a hope and a prayer. I mean, that was just very fortunate for those drivers involved in that one, and you know, some survive, some don't. At that point, though, they were already so damaged, Nolan, that you're fighting for scraps back there. I mean, you're just trying to get anything you can out of this race, and unfortunate end for those drivers. It goes from bad to worse, but what we learned was that there's a clear advantage to Eberhard and Freenosh, right? They took off right away. But damaged race cars can still make that up with the draft. And after Eberhard and Freenach pulled way out in front, we saw some drivers pull up onto the scene, get there into a competitive position, and likely had a really good look, if you're Sean Casto, at winning this race. Now for Casto, he was in that third position only. We talked about how far Keep It Real needed to try to go on fuel. Well, he was forced to pit road to top off. He now finds himself way back in 13th position. So I don't know if he would have even made it if that thing stayed green, but Casto, needing fuel for this second overtime attempt, has had to pit, and that takes him out of the conversation, at least somewhat. 15th still doable, but it's going to be a lot of hard work with damage.
Now, it's still not a two-horse race, because don't forget, you still have the driver that was pushing Casto, Josh Ball. Where is Ball? That white and red, number 9, second place on the inside line, starting third overall. This is still not over by a long shot. Tom Wetmore to the outside of him. Who knows? Maybe they'll have two tandem trains coming on over out of turn 4 for the Daytona 250. Pace car is going to pull down and in. It's attempt at an overtime number 2. Green flag is back in the air. Eberhard from the high side launches, and we're back to green.
And it's another good jump for the 90 car. Expect him to pull down in line. Yes, he does. So once again, Eberhard leading Freenach. Do not count out Josh Ball third, Cody Harris fourth. Agno Phillip without a hood finds himself back in the number 5 position. But single file right now through 1 and 2.
Single file through turn 2 and down the back straightaway for what could be the opposite time today. Cody Harris trying to link up with Josh Ball. And Harris, I mentioned it before, he was 8th place and he had one of the only undamaged cars in this field. He has the shot at going for a race win as well, as Freenach looks to shove Eberhard to the white flag.
Josh Ball looks pretty clean as well, but they are not drafting like your race leaders are. Andrew Freenach is going to put Eberhard to the white flag. This race now is official. Still a 2-car tandem. They're 3 wide behind, but your leaders trying to pull away. 2-horse race right now in turn 2. Can Josh Ball and Cody Harris get there?
It's a 2-horse race. If Josh Ball's got anything in that number 9 Chevrolet, now's the time to use it. Starting to close the gap. Cody Harris trying to push with him. Freenach still up on Eberhard, but how long will this alliance last?
2 of the biggest names in the series. 1-2 late here at Daytona. Josh Ball now gets to the bumper in third. Who does he go with? Freenach goes to the outside. Ball, though, going to push Eberhard on the inside. Harris 3 wide. Drag race to the line. Daniel Eberhard wins the Daytona 250.
Run that Freenach had as he pulled to the high side. If Cody Harris had stuck with him instead of trying to go for glory, could the 88 car have possibly made it to the line? That question will go unanswered as Eberhard pulled clear to take the victory, and he has got none other than Josh Ball to thank for that one.
Meanwhile, that second pack wrecked after the start-finish line. A couple of cars on their lids, but up front, they kept it clean. A 3-wide finish for the win in the Daytona 250. And on the inside line, it was Daniel Eberhard who led a race second best of 17 laps, who gets the win in the Daytona 250. He will celebrate on the front straightaway once again in victory lane, the 24th of his Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series career. And Daniel Eberhard Nolan is locked into the playoffs and will fight once more for that elusive Full Throttle crown in 2022.
And here is the replay of that wreck across the line. Couple cars dipping down low, and it's just after the line. The 44 up into the air, and the 28 just getting kick flipped over onto his roof, and he never got back on his wheels, by the way. That 28 slid all the way on his roof until well after the line. What a run, though, for a lot of these drivers in this field, and what a way to kick off the season opener. Green until the last 10, and an exciting 4-way battle to end it all off.
It was an incredible finish to the season opener. Let's take a look at your SK Sim Racing full race results tonight. Daniel Eberhard Final margin of victory 0.075 seconds to take home the checkered flag over Josh Ball in second and Cody Harris in third. Somehow, through all of that, it was Andrew Freenach who looked to the outside for the win out of 4, finishes lowest of all of those drivers in 4th position. Sean Casto comes home 5th tonight ahead of his teammate Brandon DeBuey in 6th, Connor Horn 7th, with Nick Silver in 8th, Michael Araya 9th, and William Schmidt rounds out your top 10.
That'll put Joseph Tice down in 11th place with Chris Rabel in 12th. David Washington was 13th with Agdal Phillip in 14th. Jaron Wymaster is 15th place. Timothy Johnson is going to be in 16th. It's Tom Wetmore in 17th. Braden Whittaker in 18th. Eric Stanford and Michael Johnson round out the top half of the field.
And only 2 more drivers finished on the lead lap. It'd be Nick Cohan 21st and Sam Nieto 22nd. But a lot of drivers were in the conversation. 23rd through 29th all finished 1 lap down. That will include Kyle Kamer, Kevin King, Shane Paris, Sean Kalist, Mike Kaczynski, Tom Morano, and Thomas George. Shane Ewing did not see the checkered flag. He finishes in 30th.
And that will put the likes of Brett McBride in 31st with Ross Cato 32nd. James Pascarella was 33rd with Chris Edwards in 34th. Minati Major was 35th. Brandon Six finishes his race in 36th place after leading a good portion of this race. Dylan Parker is 37th with David Kolb in 38th. Bradley Burke is 39th. And sure enough, DeBarro did make up 1 position after not starting this race at 40th. He passed Brian Chambliss, who finishes 68 laps down in 41st.
And that's a look top to bottom at your SK Sim Racing full race results. We're waiting to talk with your race winner, Daniel Eberhardt. So let's see who's hanging out, Nolan. Let's see if we can dial up Cody Harris on the radio, who came home tonight in 3rd.
And it is going to be none other than one Cody Harris to be with us up here in this field. And I have to say, Cody, what a run for you. I mean, 39th to 3rd is no small feat, even at Daytona. Why don't you walk us through what it was like for you working your way up through the field to finish on the podium?
Well, it didn't really go well at all until the first caution that set everything off. I got on a different strategy and then just didn't have enough cars with the group we were running with to run as fast as leaders. So then around 20 to go, we were in that lead pack. Then I had to pit again. I pitted again, I missed my box, had to back up, wasted time, got a lap down, and then I just fought really hard to stay on the lead lap there, and fortunate enough the wreck happened. Fortunate enough that the wreck happened behind us, and then I was able to get the lucky dog, and then from there, just everything worked out in my favor, and I had enough fuel to make it to the end. It was pretty exciting. At the end, I was thinking maybe I should have went with Freenach. I was hoping that the 90 was going to be stalled out more by the side draft, but hindsight's 2020, but I'm really happy to open the season with a 3rd place finish.
And this race did go green for a good portion of the length throughout that middle portion, all the way up until about 10 to go. So how was the pit strategy looking for you throughout the race so far?
I didn't realize so many people were going to pit early, so I was playing the long game there and I was going to go run the first one all the way to the end and then short fill, which is what happened, but the few people that were on my strategy, we were just too slow, so with no more cars than we had. But it ended up working out because I was able to finish with a clean car.
And well, despite starting 39th, you of course finished this race on the podium. Do you think you'll be able to carry up that momentum coming on over into Fontana next week?
I'm hoping so. I wasn't sure if I would like this new car. It seems to fit how I drive a little bit, and then already looking forward to a Circuit of the Americas where I had a good run last year.
Well, fingers crossed then, Cody, that you'll be able to get yourself a solid run then in California in just 1 week's time. Thanks for joining us. Congratulations on a very well-earned 3rd place finish. Best of luck next week.
Thank you, and thank you all for putting this on every week. It's such much fun to be in.
That was Cody Harris joining us from tonight's race after what was a very, very exciting race here tonight. And going to move right on to the 2nd place driver. It's none other than Josh Ball now joining us up in the broadcast booth. And Josh, I have to say, it wasn't the easiest of runs for you out there. I didn't think you would be able to necessarily contend in those final laps with a damaged car, but you certainly proved me wrong, and you come away with a 2nd place finish.
Yeah, I felt the same way. You know, I got through that wreck there on one of the green-white checkers and looked like I had a little front end damage. And the spotter said had him check, and he said that there was a tiny bit. So I was just hoping to keep up, and luckily there on that last green-white checkered, we were able to stay up with Daniel and Andrew and Cody.
And what was it like for you? I mean, I imagine, were kind of around the thick of things when that huge one happened to put us really into this 3-lap and then overtime attempt. Were you at all concerned when you saw the wreck starting to develop?
Yeah, with that 3 wides, we were going there probably with like 10 to 15 to go. I just felt obviously it was going to happen. And, you guys probably felt the same way. And luckily it was behind us at that time. And then, I honestly don't know how I got through the one wreck on green-white checkered. I just kind of kept it in the middle, and everybody stayed to the outside and the inside. It felt like I was in Days of Thunder, and just kept going straight, really.
So it's just about as good of a result as you could hope for from Daytona in the season opener, especially with a car that had damage on it, knowing how crucial that can be at a track like this. Do you think you'll be able to carry up that same momentum coming on over into Auto Club?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, got to get out there and at least get some practice laps in and, see what we can do there. I mean, usually I do pretty good at these tracks, but, Auto Club's a little different story, and all these guys in here are, fantastic drivers. So just going to have to maybe get a little bit of practice to see how the car is and come out next week and do the best we can.
And thank you, Josh, for taking the time to join us here tonight. Congratulations on a second-place finish. Best of luck next week in California.
Thanks, guys.
That was Josh Ball. Join us up here in the broadcast booth. And Evan, I'll pass it on down to you for race winner Daniel Eberhardt.
For the 24th time in his career, Daniel Eberhardt is a race winner in the Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series. He does it tonight, though, for the first time at Daytona International Speedway. Daniel, congratulations on the win. No better way to start 2022.
Heck yeah, I mean, oh man, I'm so happy to get this one off my shoulders. I mean, I feel like I'm pretty good at these things, these plate racing, and man, I just wanted to stay up front and try to hang on. It's hard because, the 88, he's trying to, figure out what he's got to do, and, when he made that block to the top, I don't know. Man, I'm so happy to be here. I don't want to pull an Austin Cindric and put the 88 in the wall, so I'm happy that all worked out where we all came across the line and didn't wreck. Man, I'm just so happy to finally knock Daytona off the win list, off the checklist, if I might say. The old Battle Beaver SK Sim Racing Ford Mustang was hauling it tonight.
This was a strange race, right? I mean, it started very quickly with different pitch strategies kind of factioning off, and we kind of had 3 different groups going. Everybody gets grouped back up for some crazy racing late. I don't know how it took until, lap number 94 until it finally fell apart, but it was some crazy racing in those final 25. Then a couple of huge incidents later, almost everybody's damaged. You and Andrew are some of the only clean cars left in the field, and it looked like you two would have a good look at it on the first overtime attempt, and then we had to go to a second. Just kind of walk me through that range of emotions and all those different restarts you had to fight through late.
I wanted to, get a good jump and try to jump down in front of Andrew. I just felt like that was the best thing to do for both of us, because if he could have stayed in line, I'm not sure if he was going to blow up or not. I never really 2-car tandem in these things. I don't really like pushing because they're all over the place. You're just swerving back and forth if you're the lead guy, and I feel safer doing that because I feel like I can hold a better line than actually pushing somebody. So, obviously because I wrecked my teammate in the duel, Kevin King, but I don't know much about the car yet. You can just throw haymakers. That's what I'm calling it. I mean, I guess you're Floyd Mayweather out there. It's crazy. The runs, like on the 67 down the back straightaway, he threw a little bit of block, and I didn't want, you got to think if you're making that move, I showed the move and he blocked a little bit and it forced me lower. And it's like, if I jump in line, if right behind him, I'm going to wreck him. I'm going to turn him because I've got such a run. There's no way to just stop that run. There's not enough brake in the car to stop it. So I hated to put my left sides right there on the line. I felt like I did everything I could not to go below it, other than wrecking the guy. So I didn't want to pull a Dale Jr. move in 09. That's something I wanted to avoid. I didn't want to wreck anybody. And then I kind of threw a late block on the 2. Luckily, we kept it straight. It was just all around craziness. I mean, with this package, it's so fun to drive. It's probably the most accurate drafting package I've ever seen on the sim.
So obviously, it was never, I think, a question in your mind that you would fight into the playoffs, compete for a Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series championship this year. But to get that win out of the way so early, I mean, what does this do for you, right? I mean, you guys obviously want to stay competitive. It's a new car. All year is really going to be a learning process. How much weight does this take off your shoulders?
It takes everything off the shoulders. I mean, heck, even chat was coming up about me in the 88. That Wind Charger Prime, he was pretty upset. If I'm cheating, man, I sure ain't doing it right, because the 88 sure has kicked my tail the last couple of years in this thing, and he's still whooping their tails in the Winter Series. So, man, if I got to turn them up a little bit, but I'm so happy that you put on this series for us. I mean, I love it. I'm so happy Tom Moreno came on with Battle Beaver, and John Kalis with SK Sim Racing. I got to thank everybody at the team that makes this happen for the Road to Pro side, and then also support here on the Real Sim Racing side. It's just crazy. I mean, I'm locked in the chase. I don't have to worry about that anymore as long as I make the eligible amount of races. It's gonna be a crazy season. New car, new people, a lot of good guys. Connor Horn, Sam Nieto, Ross Cato, Kevin King, Dave Washington, Andrew Freenage. Obviously, he's going to be the guy you're going to have to race against all season. There's no doubt in my mind. I'm going to have to beat Andrew, and I just want the belt. Heck, I just want my name to be up there on the top. That's what I'm here to do. That's what I've failed to do the last couple seasons, and that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to win races.
I'll tell you what, we've seen you grow a lot on the surface, competing at some of the top levels over the years, Daniel, and looking forward to seeing what you guys can put together here for a full season charge once again with the RSR on Monday nights. But until next week, congratulations on the win. We appreciate you being a part of this with us, and we'll catch you in Fontana.
Thank you, buddy.
The race winner for the Daytona 250, Daniel Eberhardt, 24th career win, Nolan, his first at the virtual Daytona International Speedway. I mean, that's almost impossible to go 24 wins and not get one at, any certain track, but especially here at Daytona, where so many drivers find their first wins. For Daniel Eberhardt to finally get one after 24 trips to victory lane, I think means a lot for him to break through, and proves again, yes, I know it's a plate track. Yes, we're going to learn a lot with these cars this year, but he's here to play again, and you heard it in his interview, how bad he wants to finally best Andrew Freenage after playing second fiddle for so many years.
I mean, he has definitely shown in the past that he has got a car that is able to compete. He has got the skills in order to compete for those top spots. He already has a couple of championships in, of course, the iRock series. So who knows what we'll be seeing Daniel Eberhardt playing out throughout the course of this season. You know it is going to be a good show, though. You know he's here to fight. It's as he said, he's here to get race wins. I would expect no different from him.
And I mentioned question marks, right? There is a lot to be learned about this next-gen car. First impressions on the plate tracks is that they're fun, right? I mean, we saw the Gen 6 package change a lot. I am sure through this generation of car and through these next years, this package that we see now will change a lot as well. However, compared to some of the complaints that drivers had about how the Gen 6 cars at super speedways drove last year, I think these Gen 6 cars are a huge improvement. Look at that period of time from lap 75 to 94. That racing was absolutely insane. This race went 94 laps green and then only finished with maybe 3 cars without damage. That shows you the unpredictability of this kind of racing, but I think at least for its first test on the plate tracks, it passes with flying colors. Intermediates, we'll see. Short tracks, we'll see, but a great starting point.
A great starting point indeed. And of course, if this is what Daytona is going to be like, what is Talladega going to be like, where the track is a little bit longer, they make it a little bit higher, the track about a lane wider. You know it is only going to be like we saw tonight, only more, and that means we're in for a lot of good racing. I can tell you right now from experience, we are in for a lot of good races on the intermediates. We're in for a lot of good races on the short tracks. It's really the road courses, I think, that are at a big question mark, but these cars originally were made for road course racing, for short track racing. I have a feeling it's going to be no different there. We're going to be in for a lot of exciting races as this season goes along.
We've been talking about the development of these cars for many times, and of course it went from the 550, 500 package to 670 at all the racetracks. And listen, it's been a while since we've been to Southern California, Nolan, and to Fontana, right? Missed it on the calendar last couple of times through. It is back here for 2022. Of course, we'll see how they run this weekend with the NASCAR Cup Series, and then we go to Fontana on Monday. That'll be an interesting one as well, right? It's not really a 1.5 miler. It certainly isn't a short track. It and Michigan are almost their own class of cars, and I'm curious how much we see at Fontana next week will actually translate to places like Las Vegas, like Charlotte, because that 2-mile D-shaped oval is a bit different than a 1.5 mile cookie cutter.
It, of course, doesn't have too much banking on it either, which means you are going to, I believe, have to use the brake pedal at least a little bit at Auto Club, especially coming around through turn number 3. You know that is going to be an exciting racetrack, though. That is a racetrack where it is so easy to go 3, 4 wide, even 5 wide, if the drivers, of course, are brave enough. So you know that we're going to be having an exciting race at Auto Club. I am so glad that it is finally back on a series calendar. It has been far too long, and I have to say, I think it is honestly a little bit more of an underrated track. It is one of those racetracks that it just drives well no matter what you race there, and we're going to be seeing a phenomenal race there for the second race. Perfect way to really kick off the season after coming off of such a barn burner of a race at Daytona.
One race down, 29 to go. We're happy that you're strapped into the virtual seat and along for the ride with us for another season of full throttle racing on RaceSpotTV. Until next time, though, that is it for us here tonight for the virtual Daytona International Speedway. So on behalf of our entire team at Real Sim Racing, RaceSpotTV, and our friends at SK Sim Racing, for your broadcast team tonight as well, for our producer downstairs, Hugo Luis, for Nolan Rempel, and to myself, Evan Pasoko, saying thanks for tuning in and congratulations to Daniel Eberhardt, your Daytona 250 champion. We're back next Monday night on Monday, February the 28th for the virtual Auto Club Speedway. That race and every race of the 2022 Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series can be found exclusively here on RaceSpotTV. Till next time, good night from Daytona.